Hey everyone, and welcome to Backseat Sports. I'm Josh, that's Caleb, and today we are grading Matt Rhule's first few months as Nebraska's head coach. Obviously, a lot has happened. He came in with some high expectations and a thunderous applause, and so today we're going through the good, the bad, the ugly, and giving grades, putting him through the school report card about everything that he's done so far when it comes to just his leadership, but as far as roster, the recruiting, the transfer portal, the coaching hires, and really the X and O's and his strategy and the things that he's brought to the table when it comes to football specifically. And we'll be going through it all. So it's going to be a blast. Caleb, how you doing?
Doing great. Ready to, tie a bow on this madness that has been his first few months as head coach. So much has gone on. A lot to do, obviously. And yeah, it's fun to give these early grades of how everything's going to happen. Obviously, there's time for him to change grades on the report card for better or worse, depending on how this season goes and his tenure. But yeah, excited to grade thus far and get going and talking about it.
Yeah, so I think we can start off really simple and then get into the really fun stuff here in a few minutes. So off the rip, let's just talk about how he came in as the leader for this program when he's come to bringing energy, revitalizing the fan base, his presence on social media, and how he's just kind of been the face of the program so far as Huskers head coach. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought he's done a good job. Obviously, the weird Twitter stuff is what comes to mind first with all the emojis, his cryptic tweets, which is fun. It creates some, I've seen some funny accounts of like translating him, and it's been a good time and nice buzz. I also, he came on College Game Day right away. That was also awesome. Yeah, get in the national spotlight right away during all that, and even the trying to fit into the Nebraska culture, embracing that. Obviously, he understands that Scott Frost before was beloved for better or worse for these last few years because of what he had, accomplished as a player. So he needed to, build some of this for himself. He's gone to like all the high schools in Nebraska. It feels like him and all the assistant coaches doing recruiting, which has been awesome to see. And he brought back Randy Gregory, and they just did a random hype video.
That was actually sick.
That was super cool.
He hadn't been
again.
back since he graduated, I don't think.
And he's like
the best player since then.
Yeah, just good stuff.
Busting with the boys.
That. Oh, I can't forget that either.
Let's go.
It's hilarious. Will Compton, his rise to fame. The least cool of the 2010 defense.
Yeah, but the most talented. Come on, best player of all time.
If you go Sue, Levante, David, Will Compton, Will Compton
Sue,
for
Levante,
sure.
David, yeah.
Sure, Sue's like in year 11. Will
still making plays for the Eagles.
But it's the peaks. It's the peaks.
It's about the peaks.
And right now, Will's peaking at the right time.
He is.
You saw the Twitter pic of his Tom Brady lookalike. Yeah. Way more shredded than Tom.
Also, nobody actually cares what you do in the league. It's really about what you do out of the league. Right?
Exactly.
And Will is killing the game.
It's all scripted anyway.
It is. And so who's the real winner here? But anyway, at the end of the day, I think as well with Matt Rhule, of course, also dealing with the distractions, the Mickey Joseph stuff this offseason as well, I think was all really handled well. And he's great in front of camera. He's great in the press conference. And where are you at with the grade here on Matt Rhule and his presence as a leader for Nebraska?
He's done a good job. I'd give him an A. A hard, weird situation to fill with everything that had been on with Scott Frost and all that, and for the transition to make it comfortable and do a good job, I think I'd give him an A in this category.
I really appreciate his transparency and his willingness to answer the questions that are asked him in the press conferences and how he approaches them. It's less cryptic than what we're used to over the past, decade or more with Nebraska. So I've really enjoyed it. Honestly, when it comes to what you could expect, it's either an A, maybe an A+ for me. I'm really happy with how Rhule's handled it. So good stuff. That's a good start to the report card here for Matt Rhule. So with that said, let's head over into kind of the roster changes and start with the recruiting class, specifically the 2023 recruiting class, and we're going to separate out the high school recruits and JUCO from the transfer portal and give a grade for both of them. So what are your thoughts currently on this recruiting class? It's now 27 members, 27 high school players including a JUCO player. And 20 of them were signed after Rhule has arrived as head coach.
Yeah. Again, he's done a really good job. He got a top 25 recruiting class, 29th on 24/7, 24th on Rivals. Getting Coleman, the big in-state recruit, was kind of the biggest one. He's our highest recruit of the recruiting class.
Decommitted actually initially.
Decommitted, yes.
When he was hired.
All the Mickey Joe, with all the Mickey Joe stuff. And after that, so again, for him to reel him in, who's a top 100 guy from our own state, really that speaks a lot. And again, Malachi has done really good things in the Polynesian Bowl afterward too, like the second fastest guy in the camp, and the 2 touchdowns. So again, like, just that was a really big point for him, I think, and I think that won a lot of fans over, being able to keep some of the in-state guys there. Then also, I guess the Texas plan has been really interesting. He's brought in a lot of guys from Texas. That's been a big focal point for him for Texas football, Texas high school football, obviously, which we'll see later too.
With his connection there, it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. So like, that's something that really hits home. And something that Bo Pelini and other successful Nebraska player coaches have done well.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good plan.
Which was
obviously
lost drastically since Mike Riley and Scott Frost.
And he was the California approach, and then Scott Frost, I don't know what his approach was with recruiting.
Making sure guys didn't stay was his.
Yeah.
He just had to make sure they didn't want to stay around.
Send them away. Yeah. Make sure to put them in the wrong position. Yeah. I thought it's been really good, and he still got 8 guys from Nebraska as well.
Right. I was going to say, again, I really do like the whole staff's approach to recruiting and how Rhule's been directing that. And obviously they've had these rules in place to really approach 8 schools a day and really be aggressive in the recruiting trail. And it's even worked out where there was just the story recently that, it was Marcus Satterfield who was in Colorado and just stopped by a high school he was driving past, essentially calling the head coach there. And then he ended up finding a recruit who ended up committing to Nebraska. So, these approaches can actually translate into recruits and into hidden talents potentially. And I think it's really interesting. And so far, again, 29th on 24/7, 24th on Rivals. It's a pretty solid recruiting class, especially considering, again, the time that he had after being hired.
Like, he talked about that all the coaches don't want to be the weakest link, that they're trying to outwork each other. And they're pretty upfront and forward and competitive about it. Again, just something we didn't see from the other staff, where it was just, again, a little bit more cryptic. Obviously, we're still early, so, the rubber hasn't fully hit the road on everything. But as of right now, the iron sharpens iron. That's only going to help us too. Them wanting to outdo each other.
Yeah. So overall, where are you at with the grade then when it comes to the recruiting class?
We saw Mike Riley and Scott Frost also have their best recruiting class in their first year. So that's where it kind of comes with the grain of salt for me, is we know what's happened in the past with some of these recruiting classes where not everybody stays and everything. So it's hard, but again, it's still a solid job where I'm in the B+ category. Yeah,
I think we're around the same boat right now. I mean, I agree. I think overall, the question for me, I think, would be just about the positions that we recruited. Again, I would have liked to see a little bit more offensive line. Obviously, we got a 3-star, but he was from Southeast. So it's okay. I mean, he's going to come to Nebraska. Yeah. The odds of him coming to Nebraska as a 3-star are insanely high. So it's
and I felt a little burnt from Nebraska offensive linemen, from Nebraska recently as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just I think overall, we would have liked to see a little bit more out of state, guys coming in with the offensive line specifically. So that's why I think I would give it a B, and just outside that B+ range, I think, for me.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't mind going B+ considering, again, the time aspect of it was very impressive, because it could have gone a lot worse. It could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
So now when it comes to the portal specifically, what are your thoughts on this portal class so far?
The big splashes are, because again, there's going to be more time, and so that'll be fun to follow along again the second time after the spring game. But Jeff Sims was, I guess, kind of surprising for us, because but a good, nonetheless, a 3-year starter at Georgia Tech. And I think, again, it's going to be a very competitive quarterback room. And they spoke a lot of, very good things about them. And I think the Casey Sims quarterback battle is going to be one of the best in the country to follow along with in this offseason. And it's just two different approaches to football. So again, it'll be really interesting to see which offensive kind of scheme they want to go for. If they want the more pocket passer, or the more dual threat. And so that, I mean, a good get from us. Then Georgia, the Georgia transfers were all the other ones. I mean, which is great because they're back-to-back national champions. So I'll happily take their leftovers at this point. Eric Gilbert, he was a 5-star and
a top tight end.
Again, yeah. So, and he got some playing time before getting hurt. So, and we need a new tight end. So I think that was also like a good thing. It's like that was a position we needed to fill, needed to bring in someone. And I like that a lot. And then finally we got some offensive linemen as well. Again, because Matt Rhule may say that he thinks there's nothing that's wrong and they can fix it.
Yeah.
We're both still really tentative on that. I'm not so sure.
Right.
And I think that they definitely, the more bodies, the merrier on this. So having Jacob Hood and Ben Scott especially. Well, yeah, I was
gonna say Ben Scott was the big get because he's literally gonna start for us this season. It's almost guaranteed. Yeah. So it's like coming from ASU as a 2-year full-time starter and even playing in 2020 as well. Huge get. So he's probably the biggest one for me in the whole class, even outside of Gilbert, because again, that's just a potential. It's about the potential, and which is interesting because again, when it comes to tight ends, that means we now have the top recruit tight end from both 2020 and 2021 with
crazy Fedone.
With Fedone as well. So I think that is fascinating to say the least, and how that can end up playing out. And so, back to back of the top tight end from both classes there with
imagine
Fedone
if they
Gilbert.
Both get healthy.
I know it's going to be interesting to see exactly. So that's why I'm pretty happy with that. But Ben Scott was the big one. Overall 11 players from the portal, and again, we're going to see probably at least 1 or 2 or 3 more in May as well. And who knows? Where do you feel like the transfers lacked, or what did you feel like, maybe they could have done better?
Yeah, I mean, I guess we had a commit on us too. That was kind of tough. Where one went to Oklahoma, again another offensive lineman, so that was kind of tough. Yeah. And
losing Hausman, that you almost you can kind of grade it in that sense, where like losing Hausman is actually a negative.
Again, while we added some guys with experience, they weren't like all-star players. Again, like when you compare last year when we got Casey Thompson. Again, if we didn't have like Sims would have been fine, but like I still think Casey's the better quarterback. And so, and it wasn't a position of need. And then it only, a couple offensive linemen besides Ben Scott, who was kind of, again, someone that we really, really needed. Again, all these guys kind of, they have
Billy
question
Kemp
marks
as well
around
as
them, right?
that wide receiver. He's transferring, and he'll probably be our wide receiver 3. And there's Joshua Fleeks as well, who's coming in. Yeah. So there are those guys, and you
keeping bets on, and keeping IGC.
Yeah, you retained Xavier Betts, you retained Isaiah Garcia Castaneda. So they did a pretty good job in that regard. Again, I'm with you though. You're not bringing in the huge names, and you still have a quarterback battle with Casey Thompson and Jeff Sims. So it's.
I mean, and last year we know what Trey Palmer and Casey Thompson, like
Mathis,
that was our, and O'Shawn Mathis, but especially, Thompson and Palmer made our season. And so I guess, we know that we do still need a transplant right away, like to year 1 to get this success. So I guess there's definitely still room on the plate to be desired for us to have a better season.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when it comes to the quality of the defensive players, especially, it's like we're gonna have to rely on Chief Borders, who's barely played anything at Florida, to like be probably a starter, replacing like Caleb Tanner or like O'Shawn Mathis right off the rip, or Garrett Nelson. So it's like the defensive line looks, I mean, really bad. I would be terrified of the defensive line right now, and just in general the linebacking core as a whole. I mean, obviously you've got Reimer and Henrich coming back, so it's like they're going to be back there again. How would you grade the transfer portal as a whole then, considering all of those potential factors?
I mean, I feel like a C is definitely like too harsh on it.
Yeah.
But like I'm in like the B- C+ territory.
I'm right with you again.
Yeah. I don't know if it's earned the B.
C+.
So I think it's a C+.
Yeah.
Again, there's still time. There's still more time on the transfer portal. And again, the Ben Scott and I think Eric taking a flyer on Eric Gilbert, like definitely bump it up. But then and Sims is solid, but not a need.
Right.
Unless they feel it's a need.
Again, we essentially got one legit starter in Ben Scott. And then besides that, it's guys who are decent, like at the receiving core, who are guys who have played and they have experience. But then you're banking on everyone else. And Jeff Sims, he might not start, even though he's a great player. There's a world where if Casey Thompson's healthy, and he ends up winning the starting job, ideally he starts the whole season. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, so it's like,
hopefully our O-line's a lot better and he starts the whole season.
But if Jeff Sims ends up starting and wins the job and is incredible, well then great, that's a huge win. I mean, a massive win. So it's just at this point there's not very many guarantees, and so that's why at this point I think it's not really reasonable to put more than like a B- or C+. So I'm with you.
And again, weighing it with what we got last year, and again the success that, I mean, not even success, but I mean it really success, because without Trey Palmer, we barely win games last year. Last year,
exactly. So with that said, let's go into the strategy and the X's and O's before we get to the coaching, and the grades for the coaches specifically. So thoughts on Matt Rhule's systematic approach to football and the strategies and techniques and things that he's really emphasizing. How do you grade his current approach and the direction he's taking his football program when it comes to strategy?
Yeah, I mean, the 3-3-5 is the first thing that, comes to mind. And I'm really interested to see how it's going to work. It's very different. He's brought in really good guys that all know this system. So I think there's definitely continuity within the coaching staff for this. Yeah. So I do think, with that, that's exciting that, he brought guys on board to complete his vision for that. So we'll be really interested to see how it works. I'm not writing it off right away. So I'm interested just, off the rip here for it. And, he's, the coach talk if he wants to run the ball and play hard defense because he thinks that's what Nebraska is. I mean, all of us as fans love that and definitely agree. When you think of our good Nebraska teams, even in the early mid 2000s, it was more of the same with really good defense, and we just pound the rock, and it was and that worked out pretty well. So
yeah, I mean, he's definitely emphasized bringing that old school approach when it comes to the Oklahoma drills and really emphasizing tackling and kind of having that grimy old school feel to the practices, which I think.
What Mickey brought too, which helped us.
And I genuinely think we need
immensely.
Yeah, we're going to be needing more of that. I think, and it makes a lot of sense. So I'm really happy about that. And then of course, as a whole, he's emphasizing speed as a huge factor, both sides of the ball. And we've seen that in some of the recruiting for sure. So, I mean, as we start to build that team and build the speed training when it comes to how we actually develop these guys in the weight room and tailoring the system to the players is something that he's really emphasized when it comes to, again,
which is great,
that 3-3-5. He says we're not going to be hard set on how we run it or when we run it or how we want to do it, because we want to tailor the system to the players on both sides of the ball. And it seems like we're going to have a very pro style offense. And so overall, I'm fairly happy with that, and probably lean towards kind of like that the B+, maybe A- category grade for X's and O's.
Definitely like it. And again, I like them betting on their coaching with they're recruiting guys that have speed, but maybe is not as much of the skill where they think that they can put that in them. You can't coach speed as much. I mean, you can to a point, of course, but as we know, but some guys you either got that or you don't. So, I mean, we've recruited track stars for a reason, and I think that that's awesome and will definitely help us.
Yeah. So now heading on to the coaching aspect here. So let's start on the offensive side and maybe grade the offensive coaches kind of as a whole, then we'll grade defense and then give a little bit of an other grade for strength and special teams. So how do you feel about this offensive side here and the coaching staff? Obviously starting maybe from the top here with, of course, the most important hire, offensive coordinator Marcus Satterfield from South Carolina.
Yeah, it's interesting. South Carolina fans really had mixed reviews and weren't as much of a fan. And I know with the fan aspect of it too, when you don't score on every play and every drive, obviously you feel like, you could always get someone better. And it's a tough position, again, where I think offense could be more scrutinized than the defense because you can question more calls of I think people really, really love to pay attention and understand it a little bit more than the defense. He's been with Rhule and been one of those guys. I'm really neither here nor there. I'm not going to say oh man, home run, super guy. I was super excited for on my list. He was about to get a head coaching job. Super happy he's offensive coordinator, but
right. I mean, the argument was always like, if you took away the last 2 games of the season against Tennessee and Clemson, who are top 10 teams, the rest of the 2 years there was pretty lackluster. So, I can see both sides, but I think the positive development for the Gamecocks at least was nice to see. And, but he was working with a pretty talented quarterback in Spencer Rattler as well, second season. So that also helps. So when it comes to the rest of the offensive assistants, obviously maybe the only other one that's like the big surprises were retaining Donovan Rhule at offensive line. And then wide receivers coach, of course, hiring Garrett McGuire, who's only 23 years old. Definitely at least a little bit surprising, to say the least, on those sides. So overall, rest of the people in consideration, what are your thoughts on the offense? Yeah,
it's just so crazy that we go from like Mickey Joseph, a 52-year-old vet who,
Jamar Chase, obviously Justin
Jefferson, and then Trey Palmer, and then to coach Garrett McGuire, who again super young.
He could still be like a 6-year senior on some teams.
No, he's 2 years younger than Stetson Bennett, who
insane.
Just won the national championship with Georgia. So, and it was still in college. So that's just crazy when you think of it that way. So, yeah, I think it's fine. This really didn't move the needle so much for me on the offensive side of the ball. I was just I'm kind of here at like a C+ until I kind of need to see a little bit more from them. I'm not saying it was terrible. It's not like an F or anything, but I think it's just kind of passing, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. I think the hires I liked were EJ Barthel as the running backs coach, and really Bob Wager, the tight ends coach, I actually really like a lot as well. And he's bringing a ton of experience from. I like the idea of the head coach hire, the high school head coach hire. So
it's kind of fun.
It's an experiment and something that I think is really interesting and brings a lot of leadership to the staff too, which I think is really cool. I'm not very high on Satterfield at this point either, so I'm going to give it a C. And we'll go from there, because again, those 2 hires with Riola retaining as a guy who we've seen no recruiting prowess from him at all.
No, but I get it. I totally understand why we did it. And if that works out,
if Dylan works
you all
out,
know it,
then
it was totally worth it.
There's just no way. You can't just hire a coach based off the hope that his nephew shows up. Come on.
You can if he's the number 1 QB. You 100% can, and I respect it.
It's just at the end of the day, he's done no recruiting. 0. He hasn't pulled one like we talked about before. So, for me, it's it's iffy at best. So, I'm going to go with a C. Yeah. Defensively, I'm a little bit more optimistic here. What are your thoughts on the defensive side?
I think that Tony White's a lot of fun. Again, done some really good things at Syracuse. And, I think he's very exciting. Again, I know it's a 3-3-5 and some people feel a certain way. But, again, I kind of like the experiment. Top to bottom, they're all in on this. I like Terrence Knighton, the defensive, the D-line coach. Again, also connected to Rhule, but also, has his own experience in the NFL, and then again can bring that continuity, so it's kind of nice both ways.
Well, I was gonna say I think my favorite hire on the defensive side is probably Evan Cooper. Just the energy that he's brought and the recruiting prowess 100%. That he's brought and the passion he's brought to this coaching staff is immediately felt from externally. So I can only imagine the internal energy that Evan Cooper brings.
He's 100% hype.
Yeah, so I'm really in on Evan Cooper. Probably maybe my favorite hire of anyone so far. I've really loved everything he's brought to the side. And I'm with you. I think the system makes a lot of sense. Overall, I'm not sold on linebackers coach Rob Dvorak yet. Still a lot more to see there, I think. Another a Panthers assistant type of story that we've seen over and over and over and over.
And with this, again, we feel we kind of have the bad taste in our mouth with Scott Frost and him bringing all the UCF guys. Luckily, I think that a lot of these guys, they do have more experience than some of Scott Frost, but some don't. Obviously, some are 23 years old. So
it's a mixed bag. I think defensively, I'd give it a B.
Yeah, I'm definitely more optimistic. It doesn't just, they are his guys, but they feel like they've done a little more. But
so when it comes to the other wild cards, were Ed Foley as the special teams coach and Corey Campbell as the strength and conditioning coach, and then maybe some of the analysts if you wanted to throw them in there. Thoughts there?
Yeah, I definitely like all these guys, I think.
It was nice to see Foley saying that he wants to return punts. Wow, mind-blowing idea. Who would have thought?
No, we really didn't see much of that in 5 years, so I'm excited about that.
Yeah, but I think one thing that we've learned about special teams is that if you don't have depth, you're not going to be good special teams. And special teams, this was an Urban Meyer thing. He said, if you don't have the best special teams in the country, then you don't have the best depth in the country. Well, we had the worst special teams in the country for like 5 years in a row. So I think that definitely goes to show on the type of roster that we were building over the last 5 years. And so I think overall, I'm pretty happy with how Ed Foley's approached this so far. And he wants to really prioritize field position from the special team side and be physical and return punts and make sure that we're technical with those things. So at least the coach talk is good. And I guess we can see if he executes it. And I think from the strength and conditioning side, at least from the look of him, Corey Campbell, good hire.
Yeah, I'm very excited too. I think it's a very different approach than Frost as well. Again, that we talked about this, the emphasis on speed a little bit more.
It feels like a more modern approach.
Yeah, definitely more modern football. Duval definitely seemed like too stuck in the mud. And again, we didn't really see too much improvement. Like we looked a little bit bigger from year 1 to 2, but that was just because Mike Riley's staff was just so mad on it. And and we got so many injuries. So obviously that's a big thing is how healthy can they stay?
Agreed.
And then again, like I do like, he was part of Purdue already.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that Kevin McGarry's fun too because he followed Tony White.
Oh, the senior defensive analyst. Yeah.
Again, I do like in some places I really do like the continuity, especially when we're doing something.
Well, he was the head coach for San Diego State for like 8 years.
Forever. Yeah. So
and an assistant there. So we have a lot of like veteran experience mixed with the like Panthers NFL assistant. So it's really this mix of some of the assistants are these like veteran head coach a type of people, and then you've got the young, youthful, energetic NFL experienced guys. So it's an interesting mix, a very unique, odd mix of coaches for college football. I think it's fun.
Yeah, but with the specialty analysts, I like this even more, like where I'm more of like on the B range. So
yeah, I agree. I think B or maybe B plus for me for the strength and special teams as a whole. So now we've got all of the individual grades. Let's give one final grade. Everything considered. Where's your final grade so far for the first few months for Matt Rhule as Nebraska's head coach?
Yeah, with the effort that they've put in thus far and just, again, seeing them outwork our last coaching staff, which may or may not have been, as difficult.
Disciplined.
Yeah, it's nice and refreshing to just see that care and passion again into our program. And he may be, not from Nebraska, but he's giving way more love and care to our
culture.
To Nebraska football than Scott Frost had.
Mm-hmm. It's insane. It's like so true.
Because Scott Frost was all talk and abs and like
no action,
not a lot of walk.
No,
I mean again, the dude did not win. He did not go 500 one season in 5 years.
The staff's effort, as we saw in the recruiting trail, and just overall how like the messages they were sending, especially before last season, before the hires, was just terrible. So yeah, I'm with you.
And you could say that. Yeah, and you could say Scott Frost was pro Nebraska, but I didn't see him and his staff go to like every high school.
And they weren't
Nebraska.
showing up in public spaces in Lincoln and really trying to be a front-facing
maybe they were
force.
A little bit at the beginning, but not even this much. Not even this much.
No, definitely not.
Yeah. And again, feels much more open and honest and like hardworking, which are just, again, more attributes that we want to see and that we feel like that's what Nebraska football is all about. So, like, on that stance, I feel very strong. And, I get that, like, you're going to pick guys who you trust. So, it's just kind of tough that way. Again, we kind of have the PTSD from these last few coaching staffs.
Bringing all their guys.
Mike Riley with, like, Mark Banker, who, like, shouldn't have even been, like, brought onto the staff. Or, and then Scott Frost. And then, again, he brought all of his guys. Yeah. And we go through so many offensive coordinators and just all the mess that was. So, I think we're a little bit harder on it just because of that fact. But I still think he's done a good job where it's like, it's definitely still like a B plus for me.
I mean, for me, it's like if it ends up working. So like if you have like a pretty nice season this year or a really good season in 2 years, and then you have that NFL pedigree of so many of these guys on the staff, and then you have backed it up with some college success.
Yeah, it bumps up.
Then suddenly this snowball could start really rolling down the hill quick. and end up in a really nice spot pretty quickly. But it could go the other way as well. It's like, well, these guys don't have any actual like college coaching experience, and then now you suck, and I don't know what are you bringing to the table here, and then so it could go both ways.
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to see. I'm really, really excited, and overall feeling good. So anyway, final grade, where you at?
Yeah, B+.
B+. Okay.
Yeah.
I think considering the leadership and everything else as well, and the recruiting class efforts, I'm gonna go A-, I think, overall with him as head coach, because I do trust the vision that he's headed.
Again, it's just I'm still a little bit leery on like Satterfield and some of those other guys. So
for sure. No, I think it's totally reasonable. So with that said, drop your comments down below and your grades for Matt Rhule and the staff and recruiting and everything else. We want to see them. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Hit subscribe so that you never miss an upload. But as always, guys, I'm Josh. That's Caleb. This has been Backseat Sports, and we will see you next time.
Go Big Red,
baby.